Welcome to 5-4, the slope formula. Now, we just spent some time in 5-3 talking about rates of change, and we kind of introduced the concept of slope and how to count it using a graph. Today we're going to talk about how can we find slope without the graph, but with just 2 points from the line. And we have what we call the slope formula. Now, you will use this so many times it's not even funny. So you will need to memorize this. And what this says is if you have 2 points, we call the first point x1, y1, and the second point x2, y2, and they're on a line, you can find their slope, which we call m. And I have no idea why we use the letter m, but we use m. And what you do is take the y values and find their difference, and then take the x values and find their difference. Alright, and it looks like this. Okay, so we'll start with our first example here. Find the slope of the line that contains the point 2, 5, and 8, 1. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pick one of the points, and it doesn't really matter which one. So what we do is we label one of the points x1, y1. And then the other point x2, y2. And it really doesn't matter which point is which, okay? As long as they're, x1 and y1 are together and x2 and y2 are together. So then in our formula, which if you'll remember is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, we get 1 minus 5 and 8 minus 2. So then 1 minus 5 is negative 4, 8 minus 2 is 6, so then we get negative 2/3. And that would be our slope of the line. Let's look at another one. So again, what we do is label, keep pressing the wrong button, label, don't know how that got moved. Okay. We label again x1, y1, x2, y2, and we do the same thing. So negative 2 minus negative 2 and 7 minus negative 2. So this would be 2 plus negative 2 plus 2, which would be 0. And this would be 7 plus 2, which would be 9. So that one would just have a slope of 0. Hope you remember that would mean it's a horizontal line. So that's how we use the slope formula when we're just given 2 points. We pretty much just plug in the values and solve. Now the next thing is to find the slope using graphs or tables, and it's very similar. If you remember from 5-3, we would count the slope. And we could still do that, but see, we have ordered pairs here. So once again, we could label these x1, y1, x2, y2. And then we put them in our formula. So we have negative 2 minus 2, y2 minus y1, and negative 2 minus 0, x2 minus x1. So negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. Negative 2 minus 0 is negative 2. And that will give us a slope of 2. And that's how I do it if I'm given a graph. If I'm given a table, okay, all I have to do is choose 2 of the ordered pairs. I don't have to use all of them, and just label them. So let's say this is x1, y1, and let's say that this is x2, y2. I could use any 2. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get the same answer. So y2 minus y1 is 1 minus 5. And x2 minus x1 is 0 minus negative 2. So then I get negative 4 over, this is plus, so negative 4 over 2, which would be negative 2 for my slope. So that's how I find it using either a graph or a table, and then again the slope formula. Now, the next part I think is probably the most important part, and that's being able to find a slope from an equation. Now this takes a few more steps. Now let's remember back to 5-2 when we found the intercepts. So the first thing we're going to do in this problem is find the intercepts. And if you remember, we do that by letting y be 0. That's going to give us the x-intercept. So that gives us 4x equals 16. So x is 4. And then letting x be 0. So we get negative 2y equals 16. Divide by negative 2. Y is negative 8. So remember, we talked a little in 5-2 that the x-intercept, its ordered pair would be 4, 0, and the y-intercept would be 0, negative 8. So now you can see I have ordered pairs, and I can label them x1, y1, x2, y2, and then I can use my slope formula. So we got negative 8 minus 0 over 0 minus 4. So that's negative 8 over negative 4, which would be 2. Alright, so we find the intercepts, and then that gives us two ordered pairs, and then we use that to find the slope. Okay? And then last but not least, a problem in the form of a story problem. And this really isn't that bad. They will give you a graph, and they'll tell you what the graph's talking about. So the graph shows the height of a plant over a period of days. Find the slope, tell what the slope represents. So we're going to use our slope formula, and it gives us ordered pairs. So let's label them x1, y1, x2, y2. So then I got 10 minus 20 over 30 minus 50. 10 minus 20 is negative 10. 30 minus 50 is negative 20. That gives me positive 1/2 as my slope. And then it says, tell what the slope represents. Okay, well, this graph here is the amount that the plant grows over a period of days. And remember that the top, that's my y value, that stands for height. So that's how much it grows in centimeters. And remember, the x value is time. So the slope here tells us that the plant grows 1 centimeter every 2 days. Okay? Or that would be what it tells us. So once you find the slope, think about what does y represent, what does x represent, and then that will help you say what the slope represents. Alright, and that's how we do those. So that's it for 5-4. Basically using the slope formula with ordered pairs, using it with graphs and tables, using it from an equation, and then using it from a graph that represents a real life situation, and telling what slope represents. And that's it. So let me know tomorrow if you have any questions.